Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Welcome back, everybody. I feel that we all have a story, and from our stories, we can learn. We can learn so much when you find out somebody's background. We're going to talk with somebody today who has an amazing story, and that's led him to an IT career where he helps people with technology, software, and all of that. And he joins us today. So cool talking to Jackson Pleis. How you doing today?
Thank you. I'm excited. I'm actually going to catch a flight down to California. My grandma turns 90 tomorrow for a big party. Yeah.
Wow. On the 4th of
A lot
July?
of things happen. Yeah, a lot of things happening. In fact, when I was growing up, I used to make my own fireworks. I'm a combustion plasma physicist and own my own company around it. And I have a lot of big plans for how the future will turn out in clean energy.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's a really exciting thing. Along with it, I do the software, the electronics, and everything that's gone into it. We'll talk about my mental disability that I've had my entire life and explain why I've become such a know-it-all in a lot of these subjects.
Well, you know what? Let's go right there, and that will transition us into what you do and how you help people now with your technology. How did that journey begin for you?
Well, it began as when I was 3 or 4 years old, taking apart radios, building a radio station. I thought I could talk to my grandpa. He taught radio at a college or at a high school and a college. And, so this has been a lifelong thing, trying to learn about electricity, learn about science, learn about why we're here, learn about how life began on this planet, why it would begin on other planets. How did the universe begin? These are the questions that plagued me as a kid. And luckily, I was good enough to learn them from the smartest people on the planet. And I'll explain my learning things. As a kid, I had dyslexia and alasia, making reading and grammar a really big challenge in the written word. However, to overcompensate for this, I learn everything auditorily. And what happens is I repeat the conversations that I have over and over and over and over to myself every single day. So having conversations with these incredibly experienced scientists from all over the world. I've traveled all over the world and given talks in academic settings about the research that I've conducted through the years on clean energy and how to do combustion and plasma experiments correctly and safely. So because of this, I have suffered from alcoholism and opiate abuse and things to calm myself down. In fact, luckily, years ago, I started taking an antipsychotic medication because I don't go to sleep. I will keep repeating this information to myself indefinitely until I medicate myself with something called Seroquel or quetiapine. It's prescribed for people with severe mental disability challenges that need to be put to sleep because they'll hurt themselves. I hurt myself when I get frustrated. I break electronics. I blurt out and swear and get frustrated at people very, very easily when the engineering's not done right, when things aren't done in a safe manner, when we are operating these types of conditions and these high pressure and high temperature experiments. And it's had given me a lot of success in as far as things. I helped a company raise over $100 million for building their own facility and research, where I had my own lab in Seattle where I built blast walls and sand filled things and dealt with the city and had things re-permitted in order for it to be safe. And then I wrote all the control software and all the software for the post analytics in order to control the story. And because of that, they were able to raise the money within a few months of having me take over a project out of the basement lab at a University of Washington aeronautics building, where I then moved the system out of there, where I was also sharing space with the RAM accelerator and the fusion stuff that they've worked on in the past, the tokamak stuff.
Wow.
And right. And I've luckily got to travel all over the world and be mentored by these people. And because of the auditory thing, I lock in the information forever. And so I have the answers for questions about, what happens when we die, what our body does. It releases a chemical called NMDMT. So you have hallucinations and you see white lights and things like that. But after 10 minutes, that wears off because your body is in shock. It's trying to calm you down in your last moments is what it's happening. And in my case, I was resuscitated after this and heli lifted to a hospital. This was during college, uh, and was in a coma. And then since then, in order to overcompensate for this mental thing, putting myself in extremely dangerous positions, it helps me because it allows me to focus on one thing and not keep repeating all of the conversations and the audio things that I do normally. And so snowboarding, and I fell off a 50-foot cliff. I had 4 surgeries in 2023 alone. That almost killed me, and it got infected. It's been a huge, long, crazy journey, and I'm at a young age. And statistically speaking, I have plans I've been building a race car to go over 200 miles an hour around corners, high elevation, Pikes Peak stuff, because I need that outlet. And I've been building this car at this place called The Shop in downtown Seattle, Derby. The people there are wonderful. They've helped me along the way. I took it down to English Racing just this last week, and we're working on getting the car prepped with a roll cage and all of that type of things to
Wow.
make it safe,
I
because I've
I
been
want to
through
go
it now.
back. I want to go back to you almost passing. And
Yeah,
didn't that happen multiple times as well?
correct. Yes. The
Wow.
first, yeah, I broke my back. I've herniated discs. I am in a huge amount of chronic pain for the rest of my life. And yeah, the big first one was in college, my senior year. It was kind of a freak accident down in Sedona. I slipped off and hit my head on a rock, and I drifted off into the creek. And luckily, my friends were there and pulled me out and performed CPR. I was then put into a medically induced coma and medevac to the hospital, and had to help relearn to walk and lots of things. And it didn't stop me. I continued to abuse substances to deal with the pain and other problem and the mental things to calm myself down and allow me to connect with more people, because it's really hard to connect and build lasting relationships with this type of mental things where I get frustrated and take it out on people. And I'm sorry, I really don't mean to. It just happens. I can't control it.
Well, in a positive way, you're taking your challenges and channeling them into certain projects, certain IT things, helping others
Right.
with it. And I just learned something today from you that that chemical that gets released when somebody's about to pass, and that's why explains why so many people say, I saw a white light right before they're
Yeah.
supposed to pass. Yeah.
And it makes you feel euphoric. It helps with pain. It releases serotonin into your brain, and it calms you down, because and and when people think about, oh, I relived my, life and things like that, because it slows time down as well. And and so everything is relative to that. And so it gives you a chance to rethink your life while your body is about to pass away. It's a really amazing feature. And then quantum mechanics, of course, teaches us that, our body is not destroyed. The energy and the mass is put back into the universe. So you are incarnated into the universe, and you're a part of it. You've always been. We are star children. The only supernovas are the only reason that we're alive, or why life is even around. And I got to study this at Northern Arizona University and study astrobiology. And because of this, I remember all of the lectures that I took there, even though I was on a lot of narcotics and alcohol. But it's taken many years to get clean or from alcohol and opiates and things like that. And I've had to use ketamine and DMT and other substances to help my pain management. And LSD and mushrooms, they are really, really the key for this type of stuff. And because of that, I've been able to stay away from alcohol and opiates for a long time. And the brain capacity, just jumped up probably 30 IQ points, and back to where it used to be before I was doing all of this to overcompensate for things.
What's it for you on the tech side of things is one of your favorite things to gravitate to?
Right. So right now, the biggest thing is our grid is the original grid, the electrical grid, and it needs to be updated, and we need to power things off of fusion. And I hate to say this, but Tesla, you are too soon. You're way too soon. The electric cars, they're terribly engineered. Digging holes and mining batteries killed so many people
Hmm.
all over the world. It's a horrible, horrible thing. And the big mass production of these, we're not ready. The grid needed to be updated. We need to have fusion running. With the more recent advancements in fusion and getting more energy out than we've put in, that is the future of clean energy. And let me explain. They need a fuel source, and that fuel source is called deuterium, which is hydrogen with a neutron and a proton. Deuterium is a naturally occurring thing. It actually is in all of seawater at a certain percentage called heavy water. It's also produced in fission reactors from water cooling because of the irradiation. But it's really hard. You can't transport these things because it's radioactive and problems like this. So one of the big projects I've worked on is pyrolyzing methane into hydrogen. So by doing this, you're actually during the combustion process, you're creating a lot of naturally occurring ionization process. This actually adds to the probability of more deuterium being created in this type of process. This can actually be enhanced by using things like nanosecond pulse technologies that I worked with the owners of Eagle Harbor Technologies out of Seattle with in the past to develop custom nanosecond pulsars around controlling these types of reactions and chemical kinetics, because at those time scales where you affect the chemical kinetics in combustion processes and plasmas. And so the idea behind this would be as creating an engine. Ideally, this will go up to ships. So like ships at sea, a large engine that runs on liquid natural gas. The liquid natural gas would then be converted into hydrogen and deuterium, which can then be stripped with a catalytic process. The deuterium would then be captured on the ship and held, as well as the solid carbon that needs to be pulled out of the methane during the process. These two things will then add as a commodity to the ship, essentially, because that is the fuel for the fusion reactors. And also the solid carbon can be used in manufacturing processes such as carbon fiber. The hydrogen that's also created from it can also be used to help repower the engine if it needs to have some extra power delivered to it during times at need. And then also it could store the hydrogen gas as well as a third commodity. When the ship reaches port, they can basically transfer those commodities in exchange for the liquid natural gas refill, making that the whole entire shipping industry's process and fuel and emissions would essentially go to zero, and you would actually be netting positive by producing the deuterium for the fusion reactors. After the fusion reactors get up and running and have this deuterium, we can build seawater sifting plants that will then process seawater and turn it into fresh water, which is a great commodity for places like California, where they have a huge agriculture. My brother-in-law runs a farm down there. You can use the fresh water for agriculture purposes, and we can get the deuterium out of that to self-sustain the fusion reactors. This will give us an entirely clean grid, and at which point electric vehicles make a complete sense. However, the way that it was performed up until this point has been a huge disaster, and the quality of engineering of them are terrible. The Cybertrucks, if you look at them, like the steer-by-wire and all of these technologies, are going to kill people. There's going to be a mass disaster. So I was in an Uber ride in a Tesla, and they almost killed us. They almost killed the both of us, and it was terrifying. And this was just the other day. So these things need to really get out there and be said, because it's really important to me. And these are the things I think about until I turn my brain off.
Lithium. It sounds like that's not a good thing in terms of how
No,
batteries
you
are
can't.
manufactured.
Right, cobalt and lithium, and then also I can't take lithium as a medication because of the psychoactive
Oh, I was referring to
drugs.
battery. I didn't even connect it with the medication, but thank you.
Yeah.
That shows you're always thinking, because that didn't even pop in my head. I was thinking more of, because you hear more and more of lithium deposits being found in the country or around the world, and then they start,
Cobalt.
yeah, and mining it, and
And the big problem is that a lot of the time it's not the miners that are dying, it's they move their family near the mine, and the women and the children are the ones that get sick because their lungs are less developed. And it's a horrible way to die. You're dying of poisoning from inside out. And it's not a quick way to die. And it's a long, painful, horrible way to die. And unfortunately, it affected many kids and women around the mines that this was happening. I know they've worked on recycling the batteries, but it also poses a huge risk problem. And if you don't do these in a country where you have high standards of safety, then again, you are essentially killing lots of people. And this even goes further. The rocketry stuff that he's doing is a horrible idea. There's no reason to be pushing rockets to the maximum limit and shooting them off all the time for no good reason. It at this point in time, I eventually we will want to become a multiplanetary species. I agree, but this is all of the timing of this is just terrible, and in fact, it's caused way more repercussions to the planet as shooting fire these and mining for batteries. I mean, he's really accelerated the destruction of the planet faster than any human being in the recent histories.
I don't know if you caught the story. This was yesterday. China was testing a rocket and had a mishap. The rocket took off. It wasn't supposed to take off, went up, and then came back down.
Controls. The
Yeah.
software is important. My dad's a computer scientist. I grew up with this kind of thing. It has to be all done purposely and with the right timing and with the right emergency stops and everything like that in place, or you have things like this happen and it will continue to happen. Things will break. You will not get the projects to accomplish, and you will not get the data right to tell the story around what you're trying to do.
One of the things that's on your radar, medical devices and,
Yeah,
you know,
I've
coronavirus.
worked on that.
Yeah.
In
Tell us
fact,
about that.
I was actually in China in December of 2019 trying to help fix their emissions problem. I was working on their boilers systems all throughout China in 2019 for a long time, and it was a lot of work and hard and dealing with the communist country and everything like that. And of course, was extremely sick when I got back and went to the hospital, and they had no idea what I was sick with
Mm.
because it was 2019 and COVID. And if you remember correctly, the first case of COVID was actually in Washington State in Seattle from somebody coming back from China.
Wow.
However, myself and my colleagues that had been traveling back and forth to China before that were likely a huge factor.
Wow. And one of my really good friends is an infectious disease doctor, and he was there when you were there. And it was, I guess, January, maybe the end of December, right around that time, he was noticing people getting sick. And I remember him telling me he was in the airport trying to send out the information and
It's
because of
hard.
it's hard. Yeah. Yeah.
It's all protected, and you can't go on the right websites unless you bring devices that can get past it.
Absolutely. So, in terms of medical devices, what's your research on that? What are your thoughts on
I
what
worked
could be?
on so as part of this, I'm listed on over 20 patents on sensor technologies that for combustion and plasma diagnostics, like capacitance measurements at femtofarad levels and resistance measurements and things like that to look at synthetic fuels and all sorts of different possibilities around how combustion works, the air fuel ratios. We designed the most advanced furnaces on the planet to study this, putting hundreds of thousands of volts of electricity into a very hot furnace to control internal flue gas recirculation and reduce harmful emissions in like refining processes and power plant processes. This is a
Hmm.
really big key for the future of everything and combustion and plasma. And these things are not going to go away. We need refining processes in the future to make chemicals and to make the things that you need. So to say that all combustion is going to go away and be electric or something like that is not the case at all.
Hmm. Uh, you're always thinking, and I know that's part of,
Yep.
some of your challenges. Which is in one way it's a good thing because you're always thinking about new technology, new ways to do things. How do you shut that down? Is it through medication?
Medication, yeah. And in fact, I work with a patent attorney in Seattle who owns a patent company. He's been a great mentor and sounding board for a lot of this, as well as many mentors. Alexander Friedman from Drexel University, I've gotten to talk to, is the leading physicist, plasma physicist who worked on the Chernobyl disaster and lots of things like this. And because of my auditory thing, I remember all of these conversations. So I've had the most greatest mentors all around the world: Saudi Arabia, at King Abdullah's University of Science and Technology. I was in Budapest giving a talk. I was in Montreal at Plasma Tech conference giving these talks. It's really important to me, and this is and so in order to go to sleep, I have to take this antipsychotic medication and when it to put myself to sleep, to
I
turn it
uh,
off.
I commend you for your transparency on all of this. Some people may
It's
hide
been,
behind it, but this is who
I
you
have.
are.
I
Yeah,
have. I've hidden behind it for many years. I haven't posted anything on social media for many years about this struggle because I didn't really understand it myself growing up, especially, until I've obtained all of this knowledge and the questions that I've always had wanted to know. It's been a big challenge to understand myself as well,
sure.
especially with all the previous substance abuse.
But it looks like you've taken a lot of this and then channeled it in a very positive direction. I don't know if you've ever looked deeper at the life of Nikolai Tesla.
Oh, of course. Yeah, of
And
course.
he
Huge
was
inspiration.
very similar in he was the king of manifestation, first of all, but second of all, um, he would never go to sleep. He would always be thinking. He had, certain, call them quirks. We all got little things that, that we do
Of
or
course.
whatever. But that's where his success was. And he had hundreds of patents. Even Thomas Edison, he worked for
Yeah.
Thomas Edison, but Edison apparently, allegedly, took a lot of his work and
Yes, he did.
made it his own, but it really wasn't that
Correct.
way from what I've read. Uh,
Which happens a lot in industry.
yeah,
I worked in, and because I've worked with lots of PhDs, I had to say this, but there's a huge ego attached once you get a PhD. And so when I worked on these projects, even though I did majority of the legwork for all of them, I let them put their names first on the patents because of
sure.
their PhD, and they put a lot of time and money into getting it. So I do understand why the ego is there around it 100%. And I love working with these types of people because they impasse this knowledge, even if they don't mean to, onto me because of the way that I learn.
Well, on the back end, deep down inside, you know what you brought to that table, and you can take pride in that. That you
Yeah.
came up with ideas or research technology. Your website, share that with everybody.
Spacewhaletech.com. Space whale is a reference from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It means
Ah,
everything and nothing at the same time. I would love to build this company up. I'm trying to raise money to start another laboratory that I could build underground in a cave system so that it could be safely done to operate these high temperature, high risk experiments. Um, I and and that's a big part of coming on the show as well, is
sure.
to bring awareness about all of this, because the opiate epidemic in the plant around the country has been a huge problem, and I have ideas on how to help with all of that, with the ketamine and the psychoactive drugs and the pain relief and why they work and how the dying part and the DMT, and like, because I've experienced the drugs after the fact, I've been able to relate it to my experience of dying and then also falling off another 50-foot cliff and crushing my ankle into a pylon fracture, needing external fixation devices, having 4 surgeries in 1 year, fentanyl off, fentanyl back on, fentanyl back off, fentanyl, in 1 year's time. It's a huge mentally, especially for someone that's already struggling with mental things. I've been locked up in mental hospitals and had crazy stories with women getting punched in the head and getting out of there early. And because of this, I love women. I've listened to women. I've been with over 200 women in my life all over the world. And I have tons of stories about all of that. And they get crazier. And, I have stories of me being arrested dressed as Batman and then representing myself as my own lawyer and things like that. So I've had a pretty crazy life, and I hope somebody makes a movie about my life, or a series, because statistically speaking, the way that I have lived my life, I'm probably not going to live for very long. In fact, I don't want to live to an old age because of all the pain that I'm already in, and arthritis is set in, and the ankles and the back, and it's a really hard. And I'm handicapped now, I'm disabled, and things like that because of it. And so I have my mind, but I still desire to do
Sure.
these dangerous things to keep to focus on it. And yeah, broken over 70 bones and things
Wow.
like that.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so
I
20
just hear
surgeries.
song goes in my head. Tom Petty, I won't back down. You just keep going. That's
Yeah,
I
if you think about it, I'm on my fourth or fifth chance at life right now.
wow.
And yeah, and so that's why I wanted to get the story out there. And yes, it's been extremely personal, and I've kept it to myself for many, many years because of it. But I want to share it with the world because I have the ideas and the questions. The
Hmm.
kids I wanted to be a professor as well, because I like teaching the kids and like telling them this, because I struggled with this as a kid, and I would take my frustration out on my friends because I didn't understand these questions I had. When people talk about religion and things like that, I just that's used as a mechanism to explain things they don't understand. So I had to spend a long time to try and understand it myself in the ways that scientifically make sense, how the universe began, why life begins on planets, and all of that stuff. And Flagstaff, Arizona was the greatest place in the world. It's the only dark city. The astrophysicists there are wonderful. I got to run track and field in D1 as well. My freshman year, I made conference the first meet, but because I'd broke my leg a bunch of times, it just kept fracturing, and then I needed to have it cut in half and plated. And so both my legs are plated with metal and screws and
Wow.
things along those lines. Yeah, because of this. And I love the track and field. And I want to mention that two of my teammates ran in the London Olympics, and now they've got another couple people competing in the Olympics again. It's an amazing thing. The high altitude training that's done there it's impressive.
Jackson, we're out of time. What an amazing story. Thank you for your honesty, transparency, and all the insight. I learned a lot today. Really did.
Yeah, and I hope
cool.
on the next episode we can take calls from people, because
Sure.
I loved answering the questions.
For sure.
On life.
Spacewhaletech.com is the website.
Spacewhaletech.com. I'm putting together a video about all of this for my social media as well. So
Cool.
It's in the works. It's just there's a lot of media to go through, and my cat and everything that's helped me through the process. And One Piece, I will talk about how a lot of this stuff relates to One Piece as well, the animation, and lots of stuff like that.
Let's do that next time. Thank you so much for being here today.
Wonderful.
Appreciate
Have a great day.
You too. Thanks. We're coming right back.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.